Welcome to the Pebble in My Shoe podcast. The pebble in my shoe is an analogy for an inner niggle or knowing that becomes so insistent and noisy inside us that we have to pay attention. It's usually something that needs to change. We can ignore it only for so long and eventually have to stop to investigate it, listen to it, and honour what it's telling us. It becomes a catalyst for action to change something that no longer serves us. This can be something internal, like a belief or mindset. It can be about how we behave in certain situations or relationships. Or it can be something that changes our life trajectory, like ending a relationship, changing careers, or moving to a different place. Taking action and making the change invariably requires courage, often a leap of faith, and at the very least to try something new and outside of our comfort zone. Whatever the action or change happens to be, the pebble ultimately moves us to live more authentically, more aligned to our true nature. My intention for the conversations here is to inspire or offer hope to those of you who resonate with the stories shared, that you will hear something that will support you on your own journey, and if there's a pebble in your shoe, that you will find the courage to make the changes that will align you closer with your true essence. Thank you for being here, and let me introduce today's guest. Cathy Kelly Sweeney is an executive coach based in Donegal and works in the areas of executive and communication coaching, leadership development, and marketing consulting. In 2017, Cathy and her young family took a leap of faith and moved from Dublin to Donegal, a place they loved but had no family or work connection to. Burnt out from juggling a high-powered corporate career with new motherhood, a hectic city life, and pleasing everyone but herself, Cathy headed northwest in search of a slower-paced, more enjoyable and rewarding life, and she hasn't looked back. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Cathy Kelly Sweeney, who is the inaugural guest on the Pebble in My Shoe. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's great because this whole idea began with a conversation we had, and it lit a little spark, which became a bit of a fire to have this podcast. So thank you for being a part of that on the journey of this inaugural episode for the Pebble in My Shoe.
You're very welcome. And I remember our chats very well along Mullaghmore Head, and it was just great to just talk through it. Just felt really exciting. And great. And it's so super just to be here now actually doing it. So it's great.
Yeah, brilliant. So Cathy, first of all, if you could just tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm Cathy, obviously, and I'm from Dublin, but I live in Donegal town, and I'm married with two little kids, 8 and 4, a girl and a boy. So from a work point of view, I have a business background mainly, and I worked in kind of sales and marketing area for years, for about 16 years. So straight out of college and straight into kind of jobs, kind of corporate jobs in Dublin. And then kind of soon realized actually it was the kind of people side of it that I really loved, and went on to do executive coaching, went on to do a diploma in executive coaching, and then kind of got out of the kind of corporate world and started working for, set up my own business as an executive coach. So that's my kind of bio.
Yeah.
But in between that, a lot of human experiences and loads of stuff happening. But that's pretty much me. Yeah, so living in Donegal town now, very happy here. We had no connection to Donegal. We just loved it. And I'll be talking through some of the reasons why we moved here. But very happy here. The pace of life is fabulous. Been here now about 7 years. And just feel really content and settled, and I'm working. So it's great because obviously post-COVID world, the online coaching world really opened up, because a lot of coaching one-to-one was in person still. So obviously with post-COVID, a lot of my clients are still in Dublin, but I can do the work from Donegal. So that's been amazing. So that's a lot of my work, but I also do training as well, kind of presentation skills training and different type of leadership facilitation training as well. Yeah, I suppose that's a little bit about me. Didn't talk about my hobbies or anything like that, but sure, look, always talk about the job stuff and the wife, mother stuff.
Sure, which are important and big parts of our lives.
Yes.
But what are your interests outside of all of that?
It's funny. When we moved up here, I got right back into doing the things that I loved to do when I was young. So things like cycling. I'm not a big, like, fast, long distance cyclist. It's not that. It's actually just about cycling to enjoy the scenery and get a bit of exercise. So that's a big thing. Swimming. So sea swimming. Obviously, it's so fabulous in Donegal, cold, but fabulous. So I love swimming, and that's something I loved when I was young as well. And also Irish dancing. So it's interesting. I got really back into Irish dancing and joined an adult Irish dancing class.
Wow.
And great exercise, great for fitness, but just great fun, and get to really kind of be with some lovely girls. All things kind of spiritual would be a big interest area of mine as well. So personal development, spirituality, love all that. And that's all my books are about that. There's some fiction in there as well. I love a bit of fiction, but I love just going deeper and learning a bit more about myself. Yeah, all that kind of area is fascinating to me. The kind of the healing arts, Reiki, all that stuff I have a huge interest in and fascination with. So anything holistic, I love. It's interesting. I kind of battle with that conflict of this kind of corporate Cathy, but then there's the very much the kind of spiritual kind of side of me as well. But definitely embracing the two together, kind of more and more. Obviously, friends are a huge part of my life as well. Love going out and having a crack with the girls, and we use the kind of play date excuse. We bring our kids together for like play dates, but we actually call them mommy play dates because we like to drink tea and have the chats. So women's circles are a big passion of mine as well, and just connecting with other women, especially. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting what you said about your interest in personal development and spirituality, and that balance between corporate Cathy and spiritual Cathy, and balancing that out, because it feels like a sort of a natural segue then into our conversation about the pebble in your shoe. I know that for a lot of us there's probably been several pebbles in our shoe. I know for me there definitely has, and they're different sizes and they represent different things, but just love to hear a bit about what was the pebble in your shoe that you'd like to share with us today.
Well, I was saying to you earlier, just before we started, that like you, there's been many pebbles, but I suppose the biggest one that had the biggest change probably happened about 7 years ago. So I think that's an interesting one to talk about. Yeah. So that pebble, so you described the pebble as the kind of inner niggle or knowing that becomes so insistent that we have to pay attention. I suppose the inner niggle, or my pebble, I didn't actually know this at the time, but the pebble was actually a need to really look at myself and my beliefs about myself and my own worthiness. And it was a nudge and a kind of a push to face my own chronic people pleasing. So I kind of call myself a recovering chronic people pleaser.
Can I ask you just then, because you're describing in retrospect what the pebble was, but at the time not recognizing it as being such. So how did that manifest? What were the symptoms, if you like, of there being a pebble in your shoe without realizing that that's what it was?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I finally recognized was the symptoms, and then thought, God, these symptoms have to mean something. But I didn't actually know that it was what I just described at the time. So the symptoms, there was lots of symptoms. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of context. So I had just had my first daughter, my first child. I have only one daughter. I have a son as well. I've just had her, and obviously was on maternity leave, and had just gone back to work after maternity leave. we had tried to have our daughter for about three years. We've been through IVF and everything. So we had a real journey with that. So when we finally had her, my God, it was such a big thing. And I remember having such a wonderful pregnancy. I was in total joy the whole time. So it was a joyous time that it had finally happened for us. And it was a great the maternity leave as well. So going back to work, I worked for a big corporate company at the time, and they had just gone through a big restructure while I was on maternity leave. So my role had kind of elevated, and with more responsibility, there was a lot of change happening. And I was one of the key people in kind of making that change successful for the business. So I was coming in on a really challenging, high pressure kind of corporate job. After what had been this like blissful 10-month maternity leave with my like adored daughter, so the symptoms started happening very quickly. There was physical symptoms. I got straight back into work and I threw myself into it. So kind of no easing at all. I just thought, okay, I'm back. And I was looking forward to going back. But kind of quickly realized when I got back to work, oh my God, I'm not the same Cathy that was before I had my daughter, Saoirse. I didn't fully get that at the time. I just felt very different. I couldn't believe I was going to be in work from 9 to 5, like leaving at whatever 7:30 in the morning, coming home at 6:30. And I was like, where's the time with her? We tried so hard to have her, and now I'm not going to be there for, I might just see her briefly in the morning and then at night just before she goes to bed. I mean, it was like, that was a big kind of awakening for me. Oh my God, this is how it is for people. Is this how it's going to be? And I was like instantly going, my body was like, no, this is not why you tried so hard to have a baby, so that you weren't going to see her for five days a week, So basically what was happening, I was throwing myself into work, rushing home to try and see Saoirse, and then still trying to be all the things I want. I thought I should be, like the good wife and the good daughter and the good friend. I had very little time for friends because I was just in this high pressure job. Like Saoirse was my only real priority. I had to see her, get home, see her. So all this pressure and this change. Obviously, I was a completely different person because had just become a mother and hadn't really acknowledged that huge change. So it was just got straight back in and started doing all the same things that I was doing. So the burnout was starting to kind of kick in because I was people pleasing to the point of craziness. I had a new boss as well. He was adapting to kind of the Irish business. He was from England, and I kind of took it upon myself to kind of make things great for him. So I was people pleasing him, people pleasing everybody, and completely neglecting my own self. So
Can I just ask a question there around the time frame of this? So you've had your maternity leave and you're gone back to work. So what kind of time frame are you talking about?
Did I start to see symptoms?
Yeah.
Like within 6 months.
Okay.
Within 6 months. Yeah. Absolutely. So symptoms were I got vertigo. I fainted twice, one on a plane with my colleagues. And I remember we were walking around one of the kind of company sites in France. And I remember we were kind of going around, getting introduced to different people. And I could literally feel myself like I was like fall asleep. I was trying so hard to keep my eyes open. I was the physical exhaustion of throwing myself back into work, kind of working all day, then rushing home, and then literally getting the laptop out for the next few hours at night. It was an intense high pressure time. So I fainted one night at home with my husband, and it was in the bathroom, and he honestly thought that he'd never seen somebody faint before. He thought I had died. Like, he was so upset. He thought he just heard a crash, and I was just in the bathroom. So it was like my body was just physically exhausted, probably from pregnancy, birth, getting into motherhood, the whirl of that, adjusting to that, and then throwing myself back into this high pressure corporate job. It was just too much for me. So a lot of physical symptoms like that. And I remember actually going to a doctor's appointment. There was a couple of people waiting in the waiting room, And I eventually got in, and I was really kind of impatient with the doctor saying like, oh, look, I have to get back to work. And I remember her just sitting back saying to me, I'm about to kind of talk to you about your health and your heart, going to do some tests on your heart and trying to understand why you're having this vertigo. And I was like, all I cared about was getting back to work. I was like, and she looked at me like, and I kind of said at that moment went, yeah, all I'm caring about is getting back to work. I actually said that to her and she just smiled. So my whole focus was just about work.
Can I ask you what that was like, Cathy, to sort of start to recognize that, whoa, something's amiss here around my focus, my priorities or something?
Yeah, I didn't really want to look at it. I didn't really want to face into it. I was just on a treadmill, and the treadmill was getting gradually faster. And I was like, I'm going to keep up with this. I'm going to keep on. And my body was like, oh, take a rest. No, 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 no. I didn't. I was fighting it. I was getting little glimmers of the pebble. The pebble was kind of pushing into my heel, and I was going, oh, and I was getting little glimmers of awareness. But I just kept going, no, no, no. And even like the mental strain, that was the physical symptoms. They were starting to kind of manifest in terms of vertigo, exhaustion, fainting, all that stuff. But then the mental side of it, like I would feel constantly overwhelmed. Like on a Sunday, that Sunday night before work, I would be dreading, and like the mental going over it, like getting into bed, going through all the tasks for the next day, all I have to do. Yeah, and I really felt the burden of holding that ship of the new business that we were trying to kind of create. It was an integration of the UK and Irish business, even though I wasn't the most senior person in that, but I felt like I was holding that ship, that was a huge burden, as well as adapting to motherhood. So yeah, complete mental overwhelm. And I remember from an emotional point of view as well, say that I went back to work in the June. By the kind of December, we were celebrating I think it was our maybe 6th wedding anniversary, and my husband surprised us or surprised me to like a night out in like the Westbury in Dublin, and I couldn't enjoy it. Maybe I couldn't even, like, we ended up coming home, like we had an argument and came home. I was so stressed and overwhelmed. I was almost going, why are you doing this to me? I want to be at home. I can't cope with this. I can't receive good things because I'm so overwhelmed and so in my head with all I have to do. So this is a total pain in my arse that you've done this for me, because I can't even experience joy because I'm so busy in my head and so overwhelmed. So classic burnout. I couldn't even receive a lovely thing like that.
And that's really interesting because, when you were sort of introducing yourself and talking about the different aspects of yourself, the corporate Cathy and the spiritual Cathy, and what you're describing now is Cathy, the mom, and the new mom, and trying to fit into Cathy, the corporate, and driving and feeling so responsible for everything and everyone. And like you describe, holding this ship. And like, that's such a massive image for me. I'm kind of going, wow, yeah, because you're also holding this other massive ship, which is a new family and
100%.
this new life, and this baby who you only get to get a glimpse of in the evening, and all of that. And yet at the same time, there is this person who is running just to stand still, and this feeling of all that. And I suppose one of the things that always strikes me, I think, when I talk to people about this kind of thing, is the incredible capacity we have. And I'm going to say as women, because I know men have capacity too, but it's different. And think that this massive capacity we have as women to hold all those ships, as you describe them, and keep all those plates spinning, to the detriment of our ability then, as you described, to actually receive joy and receive a gift or receive time for yourself to switch off. And what you're describing is so huge. that postpartum,
Totally.
that you can go into this job and do all that you did and hold all that you held and raise your little girl and be all things to all people. So when you had that moment with your husband, let's say, when he surprises you and you're like, oh God, this is the last thing I need because I don't have time for this loveliness.
Don't have time for a lovely surprise in the Westbury.
Yeah, right. Was that a catalyst? Was that a moment for you to go, whoa, or how did that play out?
Yeah, it was a really dark moment, where I felt, oh God, there's something not right. It was starting to kind of hit me then. And my husband had actually had a conversation with me, say maybe a month before that, where he'd said to me, like, he just felt totally isolated. He felt like my obsession with work and then just Saoirse were the two things. I had no time for anything else, no time. But he felt isolated. And he was really struggling with that. He felt like our relationship had kind of, it just couldn't connect with me. And I dismissed that conversation, Miffy. I remember going, he's just like, he's a real softy, and he's, I'm getting back to work and I'm under pressure. How does he not understand that and support me? So I kind of dismissed it. And then after that, the anniversary thing in the Westbury, he had another comment, like another having the conversation again. Look, Cathy, what is going on? And it was only after the second conversation, and I kind of dawned on me, oh my God, my marriage is actually potentially in trouble.
Okay.
It didn't hit me until he had that second. Now, he didn't say those words.
No.
And I never felt like he was walking out the door, but I just thought he was so disconnected. He just didn't know what to do. He was trying to get through to me. And that second conversation with him after what had happened in the Westbury, and then all the physical symptoms and the doctor's appointment and all these little things, they were pebbles that were dodging and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that final conversation with Mike was, oh my God, my priorities are totally all over the place. And that's when we agreed that I was going to ask for a 3-day week in work, so reduced hours. And if they didn't accept that, I was going to leave. So we had made that decision. That was a massive relief to me.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to ask, how did that feel? Because sometimes that can really feel confrontational to have to actually really own all of that. But it was a relief.
It was a relief. And it was like, oh, finally I can rest. And it felt like clarity, like there was an end to my exhaustion and overwhelm that was coming. There was other people who had reduced hours who were at similar levels to me that had been working perfectly fine within that. They were flexible. So I kind of thought there was a good possibility that I would get it, which I did get it. But funnily enough, when women take reduced hours, they tend to squash all the work. We don't reorganize our jobs so that we're doing less. We just squash it all into the reduced time, which is what I did.
Yeah. Talk me through the change process, that you're transitioning from full-blown corporate work life plus raising a child. And so obviously something has to change, because this pebble in your shoe has, fainting wasn't enough. No. Your marriage had to be threatened in order for you to take some action. You reduced your hours. You squeezed everything into those reduced hours. Talk me through the process of change then and the actions that you took.
Yeah. So I got the 3-day week approved for, say, a couple of months later, but at least it was in the kind of plans. That was a relief. And I started to kind of refocus then. And fairness, I had to make big changes, and I started to delegate a lot more. So I was accepting that I couldn't be superwoman everywhere in all parts, and I had to let other people step up. So from a leadership point of view, management point of view, it was a great lesson and a learning for me to not try to be everything, and to allow my team to step up and to really let them develop and stop hindering them by kind of mothering them and doing everything. That was one thing that I started to kind of change. And then obviously I had those 2 free days. I would take those days and do something really nice with Saoirse. So say it was a Thursday and a Friday, that started to give me space. So that opened up a kind of, I think, a gap in my head, and we just did nice things. Like we just hop on a bus and went to town and got ice cream, wandered around Arnott's, or we'd go to St. Anne's Park. I slowed down for the first time in those couple of days, having those days off. And then Mike and I were out for dinner one night, and we were sitting down having our meal, and I would only describe it like a bolt of light. It must have been like the pebble was like literally thrown at me. And something said, okay, you've got to move, and you've got to move to Donegal. The kind of spiritual side of me feels like it was a real, suppose, intuitive, big push, like, okay, you've now opened yourself up to the possibility, and you're starting to see things for what they are. You're kind of re-evaluating your life and priorities. Now we're going to give you this big one, because this is going to take you to the next level. And I received it really well. So whatever, I think it was total divine inspiration and guidance, and I'm so grateful for it. But I just said to Mike, I think we should move to Donegal, and he literally nearly fell off his seat, because I was so ingrained in Dublin and being the perfect daughter to my parents who lived close by, and my siblings and my friends, and to just why would we go there, and we know nobody, but just something was like telling me you need a drastic change in your environment. I suppose when it came to kind of feel intuitively, once we had made that decision and actually moved, was that I know that it was the only way to save me, because I think I was physically going to get myself very ill, because I had to take myself out of that environment to fully look at myself and to fully let all those roles go. And I was heading for an illness, so I couldn't back my work wasn't enough. I think my guidance was telling me you need something more drastic, because you're not going to change enough. You need to fully change, and you need to look at this.
Yeah, I'm really curious, because you're describing being at dinner with your husband, and you're describing this intuitive, this bolt of lightning, the pebble being thrown at you, sort of like vision of it kind of hitting you between the eyes and kind of
literally
going, wake up. Right? But you're describing this intuitive hit, and how you're going, got to move to Donegal, and it all sounds so very powerful. Can you describe how you knew that was your intuition, or how you knew it was something you had to pay attention to?
I think because it was so out of the blue, it was so, like, we had been talking about moving, but we had been talking about moving to maybe like North County Dublin. So we lived in Drumcondra, so it was, a little bit out. So that was literally all we had talked about. So it was so out of the blue, it kind of made me go, what? It was like a thought just dropped into my head. And then I remember going, check in with your body. And I just literally just checked in with my gut, my stomach, to see if it was churning with nerves. I was like, this is, I was questioning how real this was. And I checked in with my gut. It was so solid. It was so calm. There wasn't one bit of nerves, there wasn't one bit of doubt. It just felt so certain. And I just said, God, this is just supposed, and it felt right. Like, I was shocked that I'd said it, and my husband was shocked that I'd said it. And he was afraid to kind of believe me, because he would have really liked to move he didn't know anybody either, but he's from Scotland, and he grew up in a small town. So he would kind of, like, while he loved Dublin, he always wanted to live outside of a city. So to him, it was like, God, this is brilliant, and I want to raise children in the country, So, but I just, I checked in with my body and felt it was just calm, and there was not one bit of doubt. I just knew. And then I never questioned it, even though it was so so beyond what I would have thought. It just, the feeling was just calm and right. It's the only way I can kind of just describe it to you.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the bit I want to capture, because I feel that that's something that we very often override. I mean, you've described loads of moments that could have been that moment for you.
Yeah.
And yet it had to get to a point of, because you said that this was the only thing that was going to save you, which is really profound. And literally you were heading for the wall, like. Yeah. So this sort of, okay, move to Donegal part. Like, what happens then? You know, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's interesting, because the chronic people pleaser. So we had decided, and I am a person, once I decide something, to tend to stick with it and go with it, for good or bad. That is me, you know. But yeah, I knew that, I had to face a lot of people who were going to be like, what? And I was going to hurt a lot of people. And like, particularly my parents, who were minding my daughter for a couple of days a week, and they had so close to her and so connected to her and everything. So I knew that was going to be a massive deal to them, and it was a massive deal to them. And I'd never in my life displeased them, ever. I was 37 at this point. I'd lived a whole life. I wasn't even like a bad teenager, as they say. I just didn't do anything rebellious. I kept the status quo. I always was the good girl, you know, went to college, got the good grades, and did all the right things, and got married, and blah blah blah. And then I was going to put a bomb under them, which it was for them. Cathy's going to Donegal. What that means, we won't see Saoirse. That means all that happened, and there was a lot of backlash. And a few of my siblings, a few of my close friends were shocked and upset, and it was really hard for me to see that. But they were fine. So it was mainly my parents and a couple of my siblings who, to be honest, didn't take it well at all, and found it very hard to accept. And I know that there was a lot of chatter about, what you doing that? Is she losing the plot? There was a few phone calls to my husband. Is Cathy okay? Why is she doing this? And I tried to explain to people at the time why I was doing it as best I could at that time. I didn't know all I know now, you know, but I just knew that I had to do this. It felt right. But that wasn't enough for them. And yes, there was a lot of chatter, a lot of blaming my husband, a lot of questioning of him and his influencing me, and like, all that was going on, this murky stuff in the family, and it wasn't a nice place, you know, at the time. Yeah. But whatever reason, the guidance was, no, you've got to do this. I knew it was big, and I had to do it. And I wanted to do it. Everything in me wanted it. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because for some, even knowing that your family are going to react in that way would be enough for some people to say, no, I'm not going to make any changes. I'll just keep on plowing on. And so there does take this courage to stand in your truth, even though, in inverted commas, you're upsetting other people.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't moving to the moon, you were moving to beautiful Donegal, like a holiday destination. How are you, for family and friends? But anyway, but it's that you're upsetting this status quo. And is there something in there, Cathy, I'm curious, for the people in our orbit, our family, our friends, the people that we know, that in some way we all buy into this, what a good life looks like, you know, that you go to school, you go to college, you don't ruffle any feathers, you're not any trouble to anybody, you get good grades, you get a good job, you get a husband, you get a life, you build this thing, and then looks like success. And here you are, raising your daughter, running a corporate organization, and heading for the wall, but that looks like success. And I'm just curious then about how stepping out of this paradigm and saying, I can't do this. Moving to Donegal is what will actually save me. And I can't really tell you why. I can't really explain it to you, but this is how it is. And is there something in there that it makes other people feel uncomfortable because they maybe have pebbles in their shoe around this stuff too, that they are comfortably ignoring or something. And this isn't to criticize your family. I'm just speaking more generally and broadly about that situation. What are your thoughts on that?
Like what it maybe, how my decision ruffled their feathers with their own stuff, you mean?
Well, yeah, or what that might have been for them, or did they just see you as Cathy has it all sussed and sorted, and her life trajectory is on track for success?
They did, and in fairness to them, it looked that way. Like I never showed that I was falling apart. I never like had a kind of breakdown in front of them, or an incident, or falling out, or was consistently getting drunk and crying, or was none of that. So they didn't see. They just saw I looked happy. I had this great life, a nice apartment in Dublin, great job, got the child you always wanted, great husband. What could be wrong with you? But inside, I was miserable. I was exhausted. I was living this life of what looked like success, but I didn't know who I was. I never stopped to ask, what do I actually want? Am I happy? I wasn't. I was absolutely exhausted, lost, miserable, but putting on such a good front.
Yeah.
So I can understand why my family thought there's something weird going on with this decision, because she can't really explain I couldn't. I had to do this, and I really wanted to do it. I wanted to move, but they're like, why are you moving away to somewhere where you don't know anybody? And, so they couldn't understand that. I can understand why they questioned it and were worried about me, because it was very out of character.
Because what you're saying there about it being out of character, and yet you described the chronic people pleaser. So you're making everything look like everything is fine. Yes. And papering over all the cracks, and a little bit like the beautiful, graceful swan on the pond, but the feet are going like this just to keep looking graceful. I can resonate so much with that, because I know myself that one of the pebbles in my shoe in particular would have been around my first marriage, and that pebble was in my shoe from so early on in that marriage that it wasn't right for me. And yet, we raised 4 children together to a certain stage, and then when I dropped the bomb and left, it was quite a shock to a lot of people, because of all that papering and all of that people pleasing and all of that making it look on the surface like everything's okay, because it's only me that has the pebble in my shoe about this, was how I justified staying for so long. And I think that's really common for people, to make everything look okay and seem okay, so that we don't trouble others with just how stressed and how awful and how exhausted we are. We feel these enormous feelings inside around these pebbles that are really uncomfortable. And yet we put up with so much in order to maintain this status quo. Massive, isn't it?
It's massive, absolutely. Do you know what? I think those 3 years trying to have Saoirse, I don't think this suddenly just happened in this 1 year that I got exhausted, and it was all, the pebble was nudging me, was there, particularly when I was trying for Saoirse for those 3 years, and I was so struggling and couldn't understand why for the first time I couldn't just make something happen. I'd made everything happen through hard work, with my leaving cert and go to college and exams and blah, 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 travels, whatever. But I couldn't make this happen, and I had to really just surrender, and that cracked me open. About a year or two into the kind of journey of trying to have a baby, that's when the pebble was first, I think, felt, and that there even was a pebble. The pebble just wasn't even, I couldn't even feel the pebble. I was numb to the pebble up to that. And that difficult, challenging experience of going through that process of trying to have a baby, the pebble was finally being able to be felt, cracking myself open to actually access my feelings, the facade that I was putting out and the numbing inside. Through the difficulty, I was kind of coming to my knees and going, I just can't figure this out. And then I was opening myself up to support for the first time, and acknowledging I can't do this, and I need help. And that's when I started going to different kind of acupuncturists, Reiki healers, people who challenged my thinking and opened me right up, started reading spiritual book, even like reading Spirit Babies, a wonderful book about the fertility journey and all that stuff, and looking at it from a spiritual perspective. That totally resonated with me, and that gave me amazing hope and insight. And so I was really opening up. So I think I was ready. By the time this came about, post mat leave, back into work, the work that had been happening in those build-up years got me to the point where that pebble could be really felt and really acknowledged, and I was willing to face it. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's massive. And interesting, you're describing this process is not linear, and it's not just one thing. The pebble in your shoe is a multitude of things. What I'm hearing in there is, when we drill down to what was the pebble, that the chronic people pleasing was part of it, but maybe that was more of covering up or smoothing the pebble, whereas what was actually there was, I can't do this on my own. Would that be fair to say, that the actual pebble was that need to be supported, or knowing that you can't do it all on your own?
Yeah, I think the pebble was, you need to be honest,
Okay.
as well. You need to be honest, and you need to get help. You need to be, you've been trying to do it all on your own. I'm fine, I'm highly functioning, I'm agreeable to everybody. I never need any trouble. And the pebble was, you're human, be honest. You need as much support as anybody else. Pride and my belief that, oh no, I can't be of any trouble. I'm there for others. I can't put on them anything. And it's funny, because when I eventually made the decision we meant to move, it's funny how the universe just starts supporting you. And I totally believe this. Once that decision, and I had made that action and that decision, I was made redundant.
Oh, wow.
So after all that, so again, there was so much I didn't face into, and warning signs, obvious things, intuitive hunches about that I just refused to look at. The redundancy was a total gift, because from a financial point of view, it helped us to set up somewhere else. But it was a gift in that it caused me to fall to my knees. Literally about 2 weeks after I left work, before we moved, I just couldn't get out of bed. And then I subsequently went on to have 2 years of depression, because I was letting go the facade. So much of my work was tied up in Cathy, the marketing manager, and the title, and I'm worthy because I do great work. I'm lovable because I do this amazing work. I'm of value. And I didn't know who I was without that title. I didn't know. So that's where the depression just hit. And then, but interestingly, it was a total gift, because then my husband said, look, should you maybe get some help or talk to somebody? And that was finally, I couldn't even give that gift to myself. I needed him to give me permission to ask for help. And I then did ask for help, and had amazing help, therapy weekly for 2 years, to work through all the stuff, that facade, the wall building, and the image and the picture, but what am I if my work was all in my productivity and what I do for others. And when that was taken away, and that title was taken away, and I was just, in my eyes, nothing, where was my worth? I didn't know who I was. So the therapy and reaching out to different coaches and therapists, supportive network locally in Donegal of women, helped me to figure out who I was outside of the image and this what looks like success, who Cathy actually is underneath all that, and grieving the loss of that. You kind of have to grieve the loss of what you thought you were, even though it's fake. It's grieving all that, which is essentially what I think my depression was, just grieving and letting go of all that I thought I was. And opening up through help and reaching. I had to ask for help, but it was. I remember going to my first day of psychotherapy, and walking in the door, sitting down, and I just started crying. And the therapist asked, "Why? What's going on?" I said, "I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm here. I'm the helper, and I'm finally asking for help."
Yes.
There's
something that you said about it being such a gift that those 2 years of depression and the redundancy and all of that was actually a gift. Is it fair to say that at the time it didn't feel like a gift?
Oh, totally didn't feel like a gift. No,
So can
but
you
there
talk
was
to me
something.
about how now you can see it as a gift? What is that process?
Yeah, I think time does that.
Okay.
But even in the midst of the depression, I think because I'd stripped away a lot of the facade and the redundancy, had taken away my title and my importance, I was able to be more honest with myself. And through therapy, I was learning how to be more honest with myself. But I could feel the gift in a little tiny way while it was happening, because something was telling me, you're going to be okay. And to me, that's my spiritual beliefs and my connection to something bigger. And I felt like I was being minded. Yeah. So I was being, I kind of feel emotional talking about it, because I do feel like that was a time when I was finally starting to see the help from. I was getting help in the physical world, but I was getting help spiritually from like my gran. Like, so she had passed, but I was getting signs. I was starting to recognize signs of her and feel her and having dreams about her comforting me. And so even though I was going through depression and letting go, we had then moved to like Donegal. So I was surrounded by nature. That was an amazing balm and supportive container. So in the midst of a horrible feeling awful a lot of the time, I was in this beautiful countryside in this lovely house, playing with my daughter like a lot of the time, having a lot of joy in it. It wasn't all negative. I wasn't feeling terrible all the time. I was functioning as a mother, but I'd slowed down a lot and I wasn't doing nearly as much work or anything. So to answer your question, there was a small gift at the time, which was, you're going to be okay. You know, this too shall pass is one of my favorite phrases. And there's signs of starting to see, like, God, my gran is really coming to me and helping me out, and nice things are starting to happen. People would be like inviting me to different things that brought me a lot of joy, and connecting with new friends that I was meeting. And so they're all starting to happen. But yeah, the actual recognition of it being a gift wasn't until I'd say I went through 2 years of that, probably on the other side of it, or maybe even a year later. And actually, one of the key things was I realized I had a constant hum of anxiety. I lived with a constant hum of anxiety just underneath the surface. And I was noticing that was gone. I was going places, meeting people, and I didn't feel nervous and, I was looking like a swan. Cathy, smile, very friendly, blah, blah, blah. But had the hum of anxiety. It wasn't there. There was just peace. It was just calm. Oh, I was enjoying meeting new people, and I wasn't anxious all the time. So that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing in that is that you had completely changed, right?
Yes.
And you're describing this hum of anxiety that had been present. You know, the whole premise of this podcast is about how these pebbles in our shoe instigate change, and that change leads us to living more authentically. And is it that you've changed, or is it that you've actually learned to become more authentic? Because you said earlier how the pebble in your shoe is about being more honest. What are your thoughts on that? You know, like, how has this made you live more authentically?
I just think that's exactly it, what you've just described there. I've never felt more myself than I do now. I've never been more honest with myself. I'm much more honest with people. I wouldn't call myself a chronic people pleaser now. I still have people pleasing tendencies, but I observe them and I have boundaries. Like, I put boundaries in with some of my family. I put some friends as well. Some of those boundaries didn't work for the other person, and I had to let those relationships go. Most of them, thankfully, did work in time. And actually, like, if you ask my mother now, she would say she feels like we have a much better relationship now than we ever had. And would she have said that during the time of me moving? And no, she thought it was all crazy. So yeah, so the living more honest with myself. I'll say when I need something now. And for instance, my husband and I went through a whole journey as well, you know, because my people pleasing absolutely extended into our relationship as well. So he had to kind of get to know the new Cathy, the real Cathy. So relationships became more authentic. Some of them dropped away that weren't made for ever being authentic. Moving really helped me to clear the decks actually with relationships. It sounds awful and cold, but because I moved, it was like I could start again, blank canvas, and write my life and live it from a more real place. And Donegal was that gift for me, and depression was that gift that I could just let it all go through the journey of letting it go, grieving it, acknowledging why I'd maybe started people pleasing, understanding that more from my childhood, etc. Much stronger place I'm in now for having gone through that experience, because I feel like the layers of false layers have been melted off me through those experiences, and I'm wiser and much more in tune with the real inner me. Like my inner world is much kinder to herself as well. Very judgmental on myself. No self-love. Worth was all attached to what other people thought of me. So that journey, of all that healing journey, took me to a much more authentic place, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, you've been so generous sharing all of this. One of the things I want to ask you, in reflection on what you've been through and where you are now, then what would your life look like if you hadn't have paid attention?
I don't know if I'd have actually still had a life. And that might sound a bit dramatic, but I honestly think maybe I was heading for like a serious illness.
Yeah.
And I would have just been chasing, trying to fix it without really doing the work, the inner work of understanding myself. And like, I truly believe in a kind of a mind-body connection.
Yeah.
And stress and how it can have an impact on us physically. I think my life, I don't know if I'd actually still be here, to be honest. That's how big I see it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is there anything that you'd like to say to the Cathy that lived with that pebble for so long?
Oh, so if I could go back and tell her now, I think I just like to say to her that it's going to be okay, that it's going to be a tough journey. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, but it's not going to be tough all the time, and you're going to be able to manage it, because there's going to be so much peace and joy when you make those big decisions and changes, coming away from work and all the pressures. You're going to find the peace that's going to get you through the tough times. You have the strength inside you. You have the great belief, and you've got so much help on both sides. And you're going to be delighted at the end when not that it's an end, I think we're always learning and growing, but you're going to be delighted when you come out of the hard stuff, because you're going to really like who you are.
Oh, that's lovely. Wow.
Lovely to even say that out loud. It feels very true, which is lovely.
Yeah. Cathy, thank you so much for sharing this story with me and with our listeners, because I just think that we sometimes underestimate the journeys we make. And I think that so many of us go through these journeys. So many of us live with pebbles in our shoe, and just knowing that it is a journey and that some of it is actually a gift, even though it doesn't look like it. Just love hearing you say that you're really happy with who you are now, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Well, before we go, I want to ask you about what's next. So you're working for yourself now, you're an executive coach and you deliver training and so on. And you're also a mom, and we didn't touch on the birth of your son. And so obviously, things have progressed exponentially for you in this time.
Well, at the moment, I'm just I'm just enjoying. We've just recently moved house. As you said, I've got two kids who keep me very, very busy. I love my work, and I work in a way that's so healthy and balanced for me. I work when my kids are in school and in play school, and I do great work online, one-to-one executive coaching. And again, I suppose I do the executive coaching because I really relate to people in the workplace and the stresses in the workplace, given what I've just talked through. So I do a lot of work with a lot of women experiencing burnout. I find that very fulfilling because I can really deeply understand where they're coming from and hopefully help them as well. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm in Dublin quite a bit, running training sessions and workshops on different things, leadership, presentation skills. So I really enjoy my work, and I feel like I have a full, lovely, balanced life up here. Great friends, at this new kind of women's circle who are all into personal development, spirituality, and we have such great conversations and great cakes and great soup in each other's houses. And we just explore everything and support each other. It's brilliant. And yeah, just enjoying life and our home, and we've got space and swimming and dancing, and I love doing these types of things. I've never really spoken about this publicly, so it's a great. Thank you for giving me the opportunity for really talking this out. I feel like I'm ready to start sharing more of my experience more openly. So I love that you're doing this, and admire you, Miffy, for doing this work and sharing your experience as well. Yeah, so maybe there is more of this ahead for me. I think. Feel like I'm busy at the moment with two young kids and my work, but definitely I'd love the thoughts of sharing more of my story. So yeah, maybe watch this space. There might be more to come, but I'm not putting any pressure on myself. I'm enjoying the now and the fun and a lovely, balanced, calm life at the moment.
Oh, that's super. I'm delighted for you, Cathy. And so I'm going to make sure that your information is in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you if they want some coaching. And so if there's anybody there who is in that space of in the corporate world, let's say, and struggling a bit with burnout or whatever, that they could get in touch with you and get some support.
Brilliant. Thank you. And so I have a website, so that's where you can find out more of my information. So I'll give you details for the show notes. Thanks so much, Miffy.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much, Cathy. And best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of The Pebble in My Shoe. There were loads of roads I could have explored with Cathy during this conversation, but we had to stick to some kind of time. After we finished recording, Cathy said that she felt that her experience really boiled down to honouring the voice of discontent, which is why I used it as the title for this episode. Cathy's website is www.cathykellysweeney.com, where you can learn more about her and make contact. I've included her contact details in the show notes. Cathy also mentioned a book called Spirit Babies, which is authored by Walter Makichen, and the details are in the notes as well. As well as hosting this podcast, I provide an online coaching service called Daisy Coaching. As well as the one-to-one coaching for personal growth, mental health and well-being, there are also weekly online group classes for stress management and mindfulness practice. You'll find a growing range of self-directed resources on my website, www.daisycoaching.ie, as well as booking links and further information. Thank you for listening to my podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please rate, share and subscribe, as I believe it helps other people find the podcast. I really look forward to sharing the next episode with you. Bye for now.